Chapter 1. The Hidden Door. John Smith walked through the empty house, taking in every detail. It was perfect. A big backyard for his kids to play in, a quiet neighborhood, and plenty of space for his growing family. As he walked down to the basement, he noticed a strange smell. It was musty, as if something had been left to rot. He made his way down the stairs and was about to flip on the light switch when he noticed something odd. A section of the wall was slightly different in texture and color than the rest of the room. John approached the wall and ran his hand over it. He felt a faint groove in the wall and pushed on it. The section of the wall gave way, revealing a hidden door. John's heart raced as he cautiously opened the door, wondering what he might find. He couldn't believe what he saw inside. It was a secret room, filled with old furniture and cobwebs. As John looked around, he noticed an old journal lying on a dusty table. Curiosity got the better of him, and he picked up the journal to read. The journal belonged to a man named Daniel, who had lived in the house before John. It detailed the mysterious disappearance of a local man named James, who had disappeared around the same time Daniel had moved in. The journal described the town's rumors of a secret society that had been operating in the town for centuries, and how James may have been a victim of their twisted rituals. John couldn't believe what he was reading. He had always been a curious journalist, and this was the kind of story he lived for. He knew he had to investigate further. As John made his way out of the hidden room, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up as he made his way back up the stairs. He closed the hidden door and headed back upstairs, determined to uncover the truth behind James's disappearance and the secret society that may have been involved. John knew that his investigation would be dangerous, but he couldn't ignore the opportunity to uncover the truth. He was about to embark on a journey that would lead him to uncover secrets and horrors beyond his wildest imagination. Chapter 2. The investigation begins. The next day, John woke up early and went straight to the local library to start his investigation. He was determined to uncover the truth about the disappearance of the local man he had read about in the old journal he found in the secret room. At the library, John spent hours poring over old newspaper clippings and trying to piece together what had happened. The more he read, the more intrigued he became. The man had disappeared without a trace, and no one had been able to find any clues as to his whereabouts. John decided to try and talk to some of the townspeople to see if he could get any more information. He walked around the town, asking questions and trying to gather any scraps of information he could. But everyone he spoke to seemed reluctant to talk. One person, a woman who had been living in the town for decades, told him that there was something strange going on in the town, something that she couldn't quite put her finger on. She warned him to be careful, that there were things in this town that were better left alone. John thanked her for her advice, but couldn't help feeling frustrated. He knew he was onto something, but he needed more information. That evening, John went to a local diner to grab a bite to eat. He overheard some of the locals talking about the disappearance of the man he was investigating. They were whispering and casting furtive glances in his direction. John decided to try and approach them, hoping that they might be able to shed some light on the situation. But as he got closer, they fell silent and avoided his gaze. "Excuse me," John said. "I couldn't help but overhear you talking about the disappearance of a local man. I'm an investigative journalist, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of what happened. Do you have any information that might be helpful?" The locals looked at each other nervously, and one of them finally spoke up. "You should leave it alone, stranger," he said. "There are things in this town that are best left alone, things you wouldn't want to get mixed up in." John persisted, but the locals refused to say anything else. He left the diner feeling frustrated and defeated. As he walked back to his car, John couldn't help feeling like he was in over his head. But he was determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. He knew he was getting closer to the truth, and he couldn't give up now. Chapter 3. The First Clues. John couldn't shake off the feeling that the town of Millfield was hiding something. He had spoken to several townspeople, but they all seemed to be holding something back. He needed more information, so he decided to head to the local library. As he flipped through old newspapers and journals, he stumbled upon an article that caught his eye. It was about a man named James Brown who had disappeared from the town a few years ago. The article mentioned that his body was found in a cave in the woods outside of town. John's heart raced as he read the article. Could this be the same cave that he had found the symbol in? He left the library and decided to follow up on the lead. He headed towards the woods and eventually found the entrance to the cave. It was dark, damp, and smelled of mold. He carefully made his way into the cave, his flashlight illuminating the way. As he got deeper into the cave, he began to hear a strange noise. It sounded like footsteps. He turned off his flashlight and listened intently. Suddenly, the noise stopped. John was unnerved. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He turned his flashlight back on and continued on. Eventually, he came across a small opening in the cave wall. He squeezed through and found himself in a small hidden room. The walls were covered in symbols, and he could feel an ominous energy in the air. As he explored the room, he found a pile of bones in the corner. He shuddered at the thought of what had happened in this room. Then, he noticed a piece of paper on the floor. It had a symbol on it that looked like the one he had found in the secret room in his house. John knew that he had to get out of there. He carefully made his way back to the entrance of the cave, but he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was following him. As he stepped out of the cave, he heard a twig snap behind him. He turned around but saw nothing. His heart was pounding as he made his way back to his car. He knew that he was getting closer to the truth, but he also knew that he was in danger. As he drove back to his house, he couldn't help but think about the mysterious symbols and the bones he had found. He knew that he had to decipher the symbols if he wanted to uncover the truth behind the disappearance of James Brown. Chapter 4. The Cave's Secret. The cave was damp, and the air was thick with the smell of mildew. John pulled his coat closer around him as he moved deeper into the darkness. He had a flashlight in his hand, but it only illuminated a small section of the cave. As he walked, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. He had the distinct impression that something was lurking in the shadows, waiting for him to let his guard down. Suddenly, he heard a sound. It was a low growl, and it seemed to be coming from somewhere deep within the cave. John froze, his heart racing in his chest. He couldn't see anything, but he knew he wasn't alone. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice shaking. There was no answer, but he could hear something moving in the darkness. John took a step forward, his flashlight held out in front of him. As he moved, he saw something glinting in the light. It was a small metal object lying on the ground. He picked it up, and his heart skipped a beat. It was a piece of jewelry, a pendant with a strange symbol on it. He had seen that symbol before, in the journal he had found in the secret room of his house. John's mind raced. What did this mean? Was there a connection between the journal and the cave? He had to find out. He moved deeper into the cave, his flashlight held high. The growling sound grew louder, and he could hear something moving in the shadows. He knew he was getting closer. Suddenly he saw it. A small room, hidden away in the depths of the cave. It was illuminated by a flickering torch on the wall, and in the center of the room, he saw a pile of bones. John felt a chill run down his spine. He had stumbled upon something truly horrifying. He approached the pile of bones, his flashlight shaking in his hand. As he got closer, he saw something lying among the bones. It was a piece of paper with a strange symbol drawn on it. John picked it up, his hands shaking. He knew he had uncovered something important, but he had to get out of there before whoever or whatever was lurking in the shadows found him. With one last look at the bones, John turned and ran out of the cave. He was determined to find out what the symbol on the paper meant and how it was connected to the disappearance of the man in the journal. As he emerged from the cave, John took a deep breath of fresh air. He had uncovered a dark secret, and he knew he was getting closer to the truth. But he also knew that he was in grave danger. The society he was investigating would stop at nothing to keep their secrets safe, and John was now a threat to their plans. Chapter 5. The Dark Revelation. John could hardly believe his eyes as he stared at the man in front of him. It was the missing person from the journal he had found in the secret room. The man looked frail and exhausted, but he was alive. "I don't understand," John said. "What happened to you?" The man took a deep breath and began to speak. "It was the society," he said. They took me just like they took the others. They wanted a sacrifice for their god. I was supposed to die, but they kept me alive for some reason. They used me for their twisted rituals, and I've been here ever since." John listened in horror as the man recounted his ordeal. He couldn't believe that something like this was happening in his town. "Do you know where the society is?" John asked. The man nodded weakly. "Yes," he said. "They're in an old mansion on the outskirts of town. I don't know how many of them there are, but they're all dangerous." John knew that he had to act fast. He thanked the man and quickly left the room. He called the police and told them everything he knew. They arrived at the house within minutes, and John led them to the hidden room where the missing person was found. The police were shocked by what they saw. They had never seen anything like this before. They immediately set out to find the mansion on the outskirts of town. John went with them, determined to put an end to the society's twisted rituals once and for all. As they approached the mansion, John's heart began to race. He could feel the weight of the situation on his shoulders. They entered the mansion and found themselves in a large room filled with people. They were all wearing robes and chanting in a language John couldn't understand. The police quickly sprang into action and arrested the members of the society. They found evidence of their twisted rituals and sacrifices, and John's story made headlines in the local news. In the end, John had uncovered a dark secret that had been hidden in the town's shadows for centuries. He had exposed the evil that had been lurking beneath the surface and put an end to their twisted rituals. The town was forever changed, but John knew that the truth had to be uncovered no matter the cost.